Coming up on Currently, Beth Milligan is here, and we are devoting the entire episode to covering the extensive damage and potential future threats that have been caused by flooding across the region. That's up next on Currently. Welcome to Currently, where we discuss some of the top local stories directly from the journalists who are covering them. I'm your host, Crystal Frost. And this podcast was recorded on Thursday, April 16th. The Tigers are 9-9 right now, coming off of 5 straight wins. Support for Currently comes from West Shore Bank. When you choose West Shore Bank, you're not just choosing a bank. You are choosing a partner committed to the well-being of our community. Visit them today on 8th Street or at westshorebank.com. Support also comes from the Fresh Coast Film Festival, Traverse City. Check out the full lineup and get tickets at tc.freshcoastfilm.com. And support comes from Old Town Playhouse, where community comes together in downtown Traverse City. Beth Milligan, head writer for the Traverse City Ticker, has not had a lot of sleep in the last few nights. Lots of things have been going on, specifically with rain and floods. And this has caused incredible damage to some local roads. So we're going to dive right in and talk about some of these devastating floods.
Sure. Yeah, it's been a week, not for just me, for pretty much anyone who lives in northern Michigan. We can start with maybe talking about Grand Traverse County, and towards the end we can hit on some of the things that are happening in the outlying areas as well, because I think we've got readers or listeners and viewers in quite a wide area. But in Grand Traverse County, yesterday, Wednesday, I went to a press briefing that the county had at the health department yesterday afternoon with other media. And so some of our key updates on things that are going on locally came out of that press conference. So I think one of the main things to, start with is some of the traffic impacts that we're going to be seeing, because we have had some major arteries affected in Grand Traverse County. I mean, first of all, at this point, when we're recording on Thursday, we've now had, as people will know, multiple days of heavy rains. Which have compounded with the storm that we had a few weeks ago, dumped quite a bit of snow on the region. Those piles were already starting to melt. The ground is still partially frozen. So that has kind of all combined into the ground not being able to absorb all of the snow melt and rain that we've been having, which is why we're seeing all of this flooding happening. Quite historic flooding at this point. So in Grand Traverse County, one of the major issues that happened this week was the Beitner Road bridge collapsed. Those are pretty dramatic photos. I think many people have seen them now on social media. We had them in our story today, traverseticker.com. Dan Watkins, who's the manager for the Grand Traverse County Road Commission, told a pretty dramatic story of being over there on Tuesday. They had been checking on the bridge every couple hours, just as they've been with most of the bridges in the area. He described it as a small sinkhole that had been developing by that bridge. Okay. And he was looking at it. And while he was there at the scene looking at the sinkhole, he described the guardrail starting to make a strange sound, like a pinging sound. And they stepped back and were kind of giving it some space because they weren't sure what was going on. And within 2 minutes, it had collapsed.
Oh my gosh. So they saw it collapse.
Yes. And thankfully, able to immediately close the road. Thankfully, no one was hurt. No one was crossing it or standing on it when it collapsed, which is very fortunate because that road does get a lot of traffic, as we'll soon talk about. So that essentially the culverts under the bridge were overwhelmed by the flow of the Boardman River. Okay. And so when they were compressed and taken out by the flow of the river, the overlying bridge and road went with it. So that is completely gone now. The bridge had already been planned to be replaced
in 2027,
In 2027, not necessarily because it was in bad condition. It just hasn't, there's the traffic flow in Keystone and Beitner has been growing over the years. Yeah. It's an older bridge. So we are obviously now having to accelerate those plans. The Road Commission is asked their design firm to kind of basically hurry up and get the design finished because it was still in design. And then they hope to start that project. We don't have an exact start date. The bad news I can tell people is that bridge is likely to be out for at least 6 months.
Wow.
It will take time to finalize the design, get all the permits. When you're working in rivers, it adds another layer of complication. So I know I've seen comments today, people just wondering, can they just throw up a bridge? It's not that easy. It's not that easy. It's going to be a challenge. The irony is that the Road Commission had been working with the state to try to avoid doing this project over the summer months because there's so much traffic. Unfortunately, now with nature sort of having its say and the bridge being gone, it is going to be out for the entire summer. We're going to have to deal with that on top of the impacts of the Interlaken 31 MDOT project on that side of town. So Beitner, at least 6 months. Cass Road is going to become the default bypass for that area. MDOT and the Road Commission are in talks right now about putting temporary traffic signals on either end of Hartman. Good. One would be on US 31, one would be on Cass. To deal with the traffic, people who are already using Cass right now know Hartman has been really congested and backed up because people are trying to get around to 31. So we may see that soon. Exactly, don't have an exact timeline. The other one is South Airport Road. I will quickly mention for Cass. Cass had been planned to be reconstructed this summer between South Airport and the Cass Road Bridge. That project is now going to be delayed because Cass will be the bypass. South Airport Road, we were very fortunate we didn't lose South Airport Road. Which I can't imagine both Beitner and South Airport being out for months.
So South Airport Road, I mean, obviously a major road in Grand Traverse County. And the section that you're talking about really is between, I think it's Cass and then, is it called Premier Street?
Or Park and Keystone, at the top of the Houston hill there.
So it's like when you go down the hill in that area in Logan's Landing, and obviously, which is very near to the Boardman River. Mm-hmm. So this is the part that we almost lost.
Yes, the just like Beitner, we're talking about the part of South Airport that crosses the river, the culverts there. Dan Watkins from the Road Commission said, we almost lost it. There was a real chance we could have lost it on Tuesday night. Staff were able to work on that road a little bit faster and get sandbags under the bridge and saved the road for now. I say for now because the earth under South Airport is very saturated. They've actually been they have engineers on the site. They've been making markings on it to see if the road shifts at all because of the concern about the earth underneath. If it turns out to be structurally sound, we'll have dodged a major catastrophe there for now. They said South Airport, if it is stable and it proves to stay stable, it will probably open within a week. So that's what we're looking at on South Airport.
Okay.
And you're right. The irony is just, a week or so ago when I wrote about shorts, which we talked about in Logan's Landing, I had mentioned in that story that officials have long talked about the need to raise South Airport out of the floodplain there. They know that was always going to be a long-term risk. There has been talks about raising it up and making it into a bridge so the water can flow naturally underneath. Maybe this will accelerate those discussions for the future, but right now they're just focused on getting it reopened.
So those are the two major. I mean, this is obviously making a lot of people frustrated in Grand Traverse County because those are two very, very well-traveled roads.
Yes.
And we have rain on the horizon, right? Not necessarily as much as we have in the past, but we also have maybe a little snow in the forecast too. So this idea that precipitation is just going to be done mid-April is not necessarily a good, we're not just crossing our fingers like it just is never going to rain again. So there's also a lot of flooding issues in that area. You said Medalley Park has been closed. That whole Logan's Landing area by the South YMCA, that's entirely closed. And so, I mean, if anybody has a business there, are they just not going to be able to open for the next few days?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some updates from folks who do programming at the Y that they don't have a set timeline for reopening. I mean, if you've seen pictures of that area, the whole parking lot, the outdoor courts, and the water came right up to the building of the Y. And there has been a little bit of receding of the river, but not enough yet to clean out those areas. It truly, I mean, things may reopen during this, but the impacts that we're going to see in our region, and we can talk about some of the others too, is going to be weeks, if not months, of cleanup. That doesn't mean that those businesses will take that long to reopen, but people should just know it's not going to be immediately turning a switch on. It's going to take some time. Even once the water recedes, for example, and this is true of evaluating South Airport Road, they need the water to recede more in order to get a full picture of the structural integrity of the road, for example, or the damage to the Y parking lot or the courts. Like they might need to dry the tiles out of the flooring, things like that. So even once the river's gone, that's just the start of getting the cleanup going.
So I want to talk about what's happening in the other regions, but I also want to talk about how these things are happening as well.
Yeah.
So why don't we take it to the Sheboygan area? We have some issues happening in Antrim as well. So why don't you take it to some of your other outside coverage? Usually you're really just covering the Traverse City area, but this has been, as you said, historic flooding all across our region.
Yes. In some cases, especially early this week, Monday or Tuesday, it looked like Traverse City was going to be relatively lucky compared to other areas. Now we've had some significant collapses and impacts, so we're dealing with those. But yes, especially where dams are concerned in other areas, there have been dams that are in danger all over the state. The Sheboygan Lock and Dam Complex, today, as of this morning, the water levels have been continuing to rise. Residents have been urged to prepare for evacuation. The river, I think as of yesterday, was just about 5 inches below the top of the dam.
Right.
So quite close. So that's when we're monitoring. I mean, other areas, Bel Air, that dam, as of this morning, Thursday morning when we're taping, Antrim County had put out an update on Thursday morning saying that they are still in the ready stage, which is when water is 12 inches below the top of the dam with levels rising 3 inches a day or more. That's their definition of ready.
Okay, so it's like a ready, set, go,
Yes,
right?
ready, set, go is the protocol, which means the emergency personnel out there are using drones and boats. They're trying to get objects out that could damage the dam before they get there. The Elk Rapids Dam is currently stable. Let folks know that.
Good.
Antrim County Road Commission is monitoring bridges out in that area. So Bel Air residents, as of when we're taping today, have not been evacuated in the intermediate river area, but they are being encouraged to have a go bag ready.
Yeah.
So we're not out of the woods with some of the dams around us for sure.
Yeah, specifically in that Sheboygan area too. I believe that, just within the last hour or so, they moved from ready to set. So, that's pretty precarious.
It's precarious, so we'll be watching that today. By the time folks listen to the show tomorrow, Friday, when it's out, things could change.
Yeah.
We have to always, of course, let people know this is a very fluid situation. So by the time you're listening, there could have been updates to that. A couple other regional impacts I'll just mention. The Pellston Airport is closed until at least April 20th. Flights have all been grounded. If you've seen photos on social media, their runways are flooded right now. They can't get any flights in or out of there. So we're seeing, and Cadillac is dealing with a lot of flooding. Yeah. Governor Whitmer yesterday did extend the state declaration of emergency to, several dozen counties across the state, including Grand Traverse, which just, that's a good thing for us and for other counties that are in that. Bad to be an emergency, good to have a declaration because it does allow for some flowing of resources and state support to the area. The county, Grand Traverse County, is also under a county declaration that is in place for a week. That, again, just allows them to expend some funds, get some help. If they have to go further than the week, then they go to the county commission for approval on that.
So, obviously, I think when something like this happens, everybody says, why is this happening? What is happening? We know that we are having more precipitation, whether it's snow or it's rain. We're seeing more of that. And that's, that's just probably how it's going to be for the foreseeable future. That's due to heating up of the climate, the earth, and so you're having your April showers are really major, and your March snowstorms are happening, and your ice storms are happening, and these kinds of sort of climate changes are occurring. There are also a lot of people out there going, well, didn't we just remove all these dams in the Traverse City, the Grand Traverse area, to kind of try to bring the rivers back to their natural state? And the answer is yes, we did in some cases. But I think there's some false information that maybe is being spread that a dam could have prevented all of these things from happening. Can we talk about that just for a minute? And I know you're not an engineer.
Yeah, thank you. I always want to be clear.
You are a journalist, but you talk to engineers. And let's just talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I do think there's misconceptions around this. First of all, generally, and again, this is from me interviewing experts about, river ecology and about dams and structures like this on rivers. Removing dams generally decreases the long-term risk of flooding because you're restoring the natural flow of the river. It allows channels to carry more water. A big concern with dams is many of them are quite old. So you get rid of, which we're seeing. We just talked about some examples from around the state. You're eliminating the danger of catastrophic failures from aging structures if you take dams out. So it actually does reduce the long-term risk of that. And then, of course, there are environmental benefits to dam removals too, restoring the natural river flow and fish populations. So on the Boardman River, keep in mind these dams weren't built just for flooding control or river control. That's the thing. Dams can be built for multiple purposes or sometimes different purposes. These were primarily hydroelectric dams.
Oh, okay.
So they were generating power for our region in the past. And so, taking them out is not what causes this. What I will say is I talked to the Watershed Center, which is one of our local expert organizations on this topic. I talked to Heather Smith. And she pointed out a primary issue is that rivers have a natural floodplain.
Yeah.
Rivers do flood from time to time. They have snowmelt. They have heavy rains. They have throughout the history of the world. And so they have an area that they naturally expand to. We call that the floodplain area. When you're building or developing, people chart where the floodplains are. You know that.
And you're trying to stay away from it usually,
You're generally trying to stay away from it. Floodplains do a lot of good. They filter pollutants. They help with the water control. The problem is we have so much development in our modern age and area that we often build right up to or sometimes right in the middle of floodplains. And the things that we're putting in floodplains are typically hard surfaces, parking lots, roads, buildings. All of those kind of things contribute to faster runoff, which makes higher rising floods when we do have flooding. So you're taking out a significant part of wetlands and floodplain areas that would normally help control this. And then you're putting in human structures that contribute to flooding. And then you add in the added effect of climate change.
Right.
And it's kind of a perfect storm of why we're going to see events like this. So when I spoke to Heather, she really encouraged, many communities are dealing with this. When we look at rebuilding our infrastructure or just building in general going forward, she said one of the things we're really going to have to look at as communities is what we're putting in our floodplains. If we just keep doing the same thing over and over, we're going to have the same kind of disasters in the future.
Like the conversation of raising South Airport Road up above the floodplain. So when we took out these dams, we didn't take out the infrastructure that's in the floodplain. So yes, we did restore the river to its natural state, except there's a lot of infrastructure around or in those floodplain areas. And this is frankly what we're seeing.
This is what happens. And then actually as an example, and where we still have a dam on the Boardman is, or recently did, was the Union Street Dam in downtown Traverse City. We hadn't touched on downtown, so we'll give a quick update on that. But starting with Fish Pass, which is obviously the project that's replacing the Union Street Dam in downtown Traverse City. That site is flooded right now. It had a compounding issue of a retaining wall collapsing in the alley earlier this week, which let a bunch of runoff come from the alley down into the construction site. Now, of course, the flow of the Boardman River, that site is pretty saturated if you go look at it. I did talk to both Fish Pass and city staff members as well as the Army Corps. They said the site is structurally intact right now, so Fish Pass is not compromised at this moment. The idea is hopefully when the water recedes there are parts of the site that they need to dry out before they can resume construction, but no one has been hurt and no major equipment has been, except some people's tools have washed away.
Right. I mean, that
happens.
That happened.
But to the point of the dams, what I wanted to share was that talking to the experts on the engineering and design team for Fish Pass, City Manager Benjamin Marantat said that, those experts had advised the Union Street Dam before it was removed was deteriorating. Right. It was rated by this, it was in poor condition. The city had to address it. So if they had, for example, lost their court battle and not been able to replace the dam with Fish Pass,
right.
If that dam was in place this week in the condition that it was in, the experts said that we would have seen catastrophic flooding in downtown Traverse City.
Yes. Okay.
So that's an important thing to keep in mind when we have these conversations about the dams. Not all dams fail, and some function great, and some do help with controlling, levels on rivers.
Right.
But we need to keep in mind that many of them are old, were built for different purposes, and as we're seeing this week, in the modern era of these kind of 100-year events happening once every couple of years, they may not be up to the task of controlling flooding.
Yeah.
So we can't see them as a save-all for rivers.
There is another issue in downtown right now, and that is the sinkhole that has developed. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so quick update on that. I talked to Chris Weber, who is the city's street superintendent. He was down there at the scene. He said, so essentially we're talking about the 100 block of Front Street, which is the block like behind Kilwins, where the bridge is over to the farmer's market. There was a giant sinkhole that opened up near the river retaining wall there. It swallowed a section of sidewalk. There's a light pole sticking out of it, or there was when I was there earlier.
And those parking meters too, probably.
The parking meters, yeah. So they disconnected the power to the light pole, removed the parking signs and a pay station from that area. It's all roped off right now. The retaining wall along the river there has been a problem for a long time. Right. The boardman has repeatedly over the years been scouring out the soil underneath the wall footing. So sinkholes have come up in that alley. I've covered them for over a decade. I've talked to guys who've worked there for 20 years who've seen them from the city. It's been a problem. They know it. They've been evaluating, engineering that wall and trying to do something about it. In the meantime, it's stable. And when you go look at it, it's alarming because it looks like there's not much land between that giant hole and the river, and could that whole wall collapse? Chris said it's stable. The water is actually helping them in this case because the hole's already there. It's sort of excavating that hole down to the bottom. They will be filling it with rock and membrane fabric and concrete to fill the hole. And then I also talked to Chris. So it's for now that area is closed off, but know that they're working on it and they don't believe that like the wall is going to collapse or anything major is going to happen there. They had already in the past moved a sewer main that runs under there back for this reason. So that's safe. In downtown in general, we've seen flooding all along the Boardman. Of course, the boardwalks are underwater. Some of the apartment buildings that have lower level parking garages have been flooded. If you look around the Fishweir area, like that kayak portage spot, water's right up to the top there. It has been going down. And Chris said he has been pulling like trees with crews out of the Fishweir. I mean, that's a big problem as a lot of these culverts are getting choked with tons of debris.
That is being collected from the
everything.
Flooding. Yeah.
And that's the last thing I want to talk about for this topic as we wrap up on that. But just know that that's also contributing to flooding as you get trees falling in the river, things are unstable, and then all this stuff kind of gets a culvert and then it's just boom, like it can create a blockage there. So they're trying to get some of that stuff out. But the good news is, again, barring the rain in the forecast, the levels have been receding.
Yeah. So we've talked extensively about the flooding. We've talked a little bit about dams and natural rivers. We've talked about floodplains. We've talked, I think we've covered this. I want to say we've done a pretty good job of covering this. Why don't we move to talking, a little bit about what comes next.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a great way to.
I just want to preface this by saying I do feel like very overwhelmed by this, and I can't even imagine because you've been covering this for so many days. But I feel like every day is a different day.
It is. I'm pretty exhausted today, but I'm certainly, compared to if you're doing relatively well, feel lucky.
So,
and I do.
When it comes to the cleanup, though, I mean, it's really going to take all of us.
Yes. Yeah. So I think, there are two things I want to say on that. One is that I think we should acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that has been going into dealing with the flooding by all kinds of city employees, emergency responders, people who are awake all night monitoring dams, people who have been wading into, for example, the river on River Road to evacuate people there who are flooded along the Boardman. This is like the time, the Mr. Rogers thing, but look for the helpers. Yeah. There have been a lot of people working insane hours. And so we owe them a debt of gratitude as a community. The other thing is what comes next for cleanup is, I talked to the Watershed Center about this too, about the environmental impact of this flood. So we're thinking right now, understandably, because we're humans, about the human impact of our roads and traffic and our houses being flooded. But the Boardman itself is taking a hit from this. Even though we sort of blame it as being the thing that's causing the flooding, all of this debris, tremendous amount of debris is going into the watershed right now. So if you have a collapsed bridge at Beitner, you've got big slabs of asphalt. A lot of these sites are treated with toxic materials like coal tar because it's an old bridge. You've got chemicals, sewage from septic fields that have flooded. lawn furniture, gas cans, trash, plastic.
If your yard got flooded, all that stuff is gone, right?
Everything's gone into the river. And it's very widespread diffuse flooding, which means when I was talking to Heather Smith in the watershed, she said, you can't track down who's responsible for cleanup. It all just kind of ends up in the water and then it settles throughout the river system. So her encouragement to us as a community was once the water is safe, and I want to emphasize that, the things officials did ask us this week is to stop people from being looky-loos. I've seen a lot of influencer videos of people going to the flooding. Understandable to want to cover it, but just know, don't get in the way of emergency responders and don't put yourself in danger, please. It's not a time for looky-loos. Once the river is down and safe again, she encouraged people to walk it and to look for trash. A lot of it is going to end up probably near the mouth of the Boardman or even in the near shore of Grand Traverse Bay. Some of it will be hard to get to, but all of this stuff will be washing up along banks. And I think there will probably be some community efforts and cleanup, especially around the bridge site, hopefully. But just know this is part of our community responsibility is that river took a real hit, and some of it we're not going to be able to reach or clean up. But if you are along the Boardman or along the bay or beach, anything you can do to pick things up, just know there's going to be a lot of trash out there.
I want to let you know about an incredible event that's coming up. And if you love powerful storytelling and beautiful cinematography and films that capture the spirit of the Great Lakes and our rivers and everything else, you are really going to want to check out the Fresh Coast Film Festival, Traverse City. What a wonderful time to celebrate these natural things, especially as we have seen them threatened here in northern Michigan. This is happening from April 30th through May 3rd. It's a brand new festival bringing more than 50 incredible documentary films to venues across downtown Traverse City and Boardman Lake District, celebrating adventure and conservation and creativity and the resilient spirit of our region. You're going to experience these inspiring films. The filmmakers themselves will be there for Q&As and artist panels, a special gala screening. It's all happening at these iconic venues like the City Opera House, all designed to highlight stories that connect us to the outdoors, to the culture and the community of our Great Lakes. And here's something really special. The Fresh Coast Film Festival is 100% volunteer-led, powered by people who believe deeply in storytelling, creativity, and bringing meaningful film experiences to northern Michigan. So whether you're a film lover, outdoor enthusiast, or someone who simply appreciates a good story well told, this festival offers something unforgettable. Tickets and event details can be found at tc.freshcoastfilm.com. Beth, I can't tell you how excited I am to participate in the Traverse City Comedy Festival.
Yes.
It's happening. It's actually starting today, Thursday. It's going through the entire weekend. You can go to traversecitycomedyfest.com. There's some low ticket alerts, so make sure that you are getting your tickets now. Don't wait till the last minute because they are likely to sell out. And I think that we kind of need to break the tension with a little laugh, right? I mean, when half of your town might be underwater and your favorite brew pub was just on fire, maybe it's a good opportunity to go, okay, let's breathe.
Yeah.
Let's have a laugh. And so I'm really grateful that this week of all the weeks, Traverse City Comedy Festival is happening. My husband and I are going tonight. We're going to try to check out a few things. And then we're off to Chicago this weekend.
Nice.
So,
That'll be fun.
Going on Saturday, and we're going to spend a few days there. So that'll be fun.
It'll be great. Well, yes, I agree. This is primarily what I'll be doing this weekend is Comedy Fest. I do volunteer for Comedy Fest. And I did tell some of the team, I said, because a lot of them are coming from downstate to help run the festival this weekend. And I did say, this is something Traverse City probably really needs right now. I'll be going to the show tonight, which is Sarah Sherman from SNL and Meg Stalter from the show Hacks. It's sold out at the Park Place. I'm really excited about that. But there are still some tickets for Roy Wood Jr. from The Daily Show and Gary Goldman, who's just a fantastic comedian. I highly recommend those headliners. They're both at the Opera House this weekend. But there's also plenty of free shows, open mics, comedy karaoke, which if you go to a workshop late at night during festival, you will see some things at comedy karaoke. It's fun. And lots of shows that are very, affordable, all kinds of improv and, different kinds of events. So they're happening all weekend at TraverseCityComedyFest.com.
A couple of local or formerly local folks too that are going to be in there that are starting to make names for themselves, like Nate Armbruster. I love that guy.
He's great.
Fantastic. So it'll be a lot of other Michigan comedians too that I love to support. Just go to TraverseCityComedyFest.com and check out everything. Get your tickets and let's all laugh. Can we laugh, please?
Yes, I know. I think we need it a little bit.
Yes. I want to say a huge thank you to Beth Milligan for another really impactful and honestly, just, it was a great episode. Even though the subject matter was very tough, I think we like to have a little fun on the show.
Yeah.
A little less fun this week, but thank you for covering all of those stories, and be sure to subscribe to the show on all the platforms at crystalfrost.com. Follow us on social media and subscribe to Currently with Christal Frost wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the full show on YouTube and on Facebook, and we're going to be checking out trying to get the full show on TikTok too.
Oh, great.
So there you go. Currently is a Compass local podcast produced by Pancake Boy Productions. Big thanks to Old Town Playhouse. They just announced their upcoming 2026-27 season, and you can find out all that information at oldtownplayhouse.com. Additional gratitude to the Fresh Coast Film Festival. It's a new celebration of Great Lakes stories and culture filled with adventure, Thursday, April 30th through Sunday, May 3rd. It's presented by nonprofit host Old Mission Culture Company. And thanks to our lead supporter, West Shore Bank. Start saving today at westshorebank.com. See you next week.